stream. We're broadcasting, and the stream is live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adventure on So Many Levels. We're going to play some Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah!
I am Christiana Ellis. I am the Dungeon Master. Our players tonight, Chooch Schubert as Autarky,
Hello, hello.
Starla Hodgson as Nirakina Ethu,
Greetings and salutations.
Jenny Meltzer as Cadence of the Water,
Hello.
James Meltzer as Ket of the Sands.
I really missed my tail.
Oh. Alaric Copperbeard, played by Mark Kilfoyle.
I don't know. It feels like I was introduced differently this time. I don't know what to say to that. Let's
I
hear
gotta
a
keep you on your
story.
toes. And it has nothing at all to do with the fact that I just looked at your little name tag first, so it made me say the wrong part first.
Yes.
And Vivid Muse as Amethyst.
Hey, y'all. I really missed Cat's tail.
Oh.
Aim harder.
We are expecting Jadzia Axelrod as Mugen the Magnificent. Hopefully she will be along soon. So, in the meantime, though, let's talk about what happened last time. You had just finished completing the ritual whereupon you tagged the Proto-Jinxie with magic spirit soap so that she will never again be able to sneak up on you in disguise without you being able to detect her presence. But then what did you get up to? Anyone remember?
Nira talked for a long time.
So much talking.
Yeah, so much talking
Uh,
about things.
yes, everybody got to hear the story, the real story of how Nira became a cleric. And yeah, and then we went to because Nira has some magic that she can do, but she needs a lot of faith to power it. And so we went to the Drow City under the mountain.
There was, as mentioned, a lot of talking, but I think there was also a delightful and moving slumber party at Cadence's house in Emerald Arboris, where Cadence finally decided to unfreeze her mom and have a conversation.
Yeah, that was very nice. And
Uh,
also, Kit got turned back into a cat.
That's right. No longer Planetar Cat. Although, I can't help it. Yeah, so James, I'm not sure what you're switching your windows, but sometimes you are completely washed out. So not right now, but sometimes we're just, yeah, like that. It completely washes you out. You returned to the Dark Elf city beneath Rashama. You once again spoke to Nira's mother, Miranessa Ethu. And what you asked her about was for information regarding who would best be able to explain to you how all of this history had happened from the perspective of the Dark Elves. And you were directed towards the cells because this particular woman had been kept as a prisoner. Her title is Storyteller, and that is how she likes to be addressed. So, thinking that it was possible she wouldn't respond well to high elves, the decision was made to have Alaric speak to her. And once you had gotten through some antagonistic introductions, she did agree, ultimately, to tell you the story that she called the tragedy of Rushama. Also of note, Mugen poofed off somewhere Nobody knows where or for what. So,
Oh my god, and then he poofed back. He's right there.
oh, well,
Mugen, why do you keep doing this, man? You just disappear all the time.
you poofed into Otterkey's spot for a moment, and the gods had to move you around a little bit. But now it's fine.
That's so Mugen.
Yeah. Welcome, Jadzia. Axelrod playing Mugen the Magnificent.
What's up, party people?
So, we just finished the recap, and you missed it, which is because Mugen wasn't present for any of it anyway. Here's a brief meta question, Jadzia, that I messaged to you, but I didn't see the answer yet, which was, are you ready to do your thing right away, or would you like to absorb for a moment and we can do another scene before we get to that?
Let's do another scene.
Okay. So then first we will...
Let me get my role-playing legs on.
Well, so are you thinking... I was thinking we would continue the scene that everyone else is doing without you there.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and then we'll flash over to what Mugen is up to.
Fantastic.
All right, so as described before, you're here in the cells, the prisoner cells here in this hollowed out stalactite within the Dark Elf city. These cells are not, this is not a dank dungeon for prisoners to rot away, but rather just involuntary accommodations for individuals who are deemed too dangerous to be allowed to spread throughout the city unencumbered. But this particular dark elf is the oldest elf of any kind that any of you have ever seen. She is very wizened and wrinkled, which is not typical of elves just because it takes them a really long time to get to that point. But, as she agreed, she will tell you the story. And so she has been sitting sideways on the bed in this cell, but now she kind of straightens herself up and actually turns to where she is sitting cross-legged on the bed instead of draping her legs over the side. And she sort of straightens up and takes a few deep breaths, closing her eyes, preparing herself. Then as she opens and looks around, she's looking through the bars at everyone else who's waiting, and she begins. There was once a child, and she had nothing and no one. She wandered the land, lost and forlorn, searching for something that she could call her own. She searched the skies, but found nothing she could grasp and hold in her hands. She searched the seas, but the water poured through her fingers. She searched the lands, but the Titans chased her away. All of these lands belong to us, they said. You are not welcome. And they threw stones at her. One stone concussed her and drew her blood, but the child took it with her when she fled, because she knew the Titans had given her a gift. Before she had nothing, now she had a stone, and she named it Rushama, which meant my everything. The child loved Rushama, and because Rushama had never been loved before, he became alive. He loved the child in return and wanted to make her happy, but he didn't know how. One day, the skies came to the land and scoured it with terrible winds. The child, who was now a young woman, was blown about at their mercy. But all the while she held tight to Rushama, who was her everything, and he knew how he could help. He chose a spot on the land, affixed himself to it, and began to grow. The young woman was surprised, and at first she was dismayed that she could no longer clutch Rushama in her hands. But then she realized that Rushama had grown large enough that he could shield her from the winds. She nestled against him, warm and safe. Another day, the seas came to the land and swallowed it with terrible floods. Rushama and the young woman, who was now a matron, were submerged in the cold depths, but all the while she had held tight to Rushama, who was her everything, and he knew how he could help. He reached deep within the land, drew it to him, and began to grow. The matron was surprised, because her cozy little hideaway was now large and imposing. But then she realized that Rushama had grown large enough that she could climb him to escape the floods. She stood atop him, dry and safe. Another day, the Titans roamed the land, and they were angry with the matron, who was now an old woman. "All of these lands belong to us," they said. "You are not welcome." And they threw stones at her. The old woman was battered and bruised, but all the while she held tight to Rushama, who was her everything, and he knew how he could help. He took the stones that the Titans threw and he made them a part of himself, until he towered above the lands, so tall that even the Titans feared to climb so high. The old woman was no longer surprised, because Rushama was her everything, and she knew he loved her. She sat and marveled, high and safe. But the winds and the floods and the stones had taken their toll on her, and now the old woman was dying, and Rushama, who was her everything, didn't know how he could help. "There is nothing you need to do," she said. "You have already done so much. You have given me a place to rest, safe from the winds and the floods and the Titans. If you would still do something for me, I would ask only this. Please give this gift that you have given me to others. Be a refuge in the world for all those who need it." And then she spoke no more, and Rushama had nothing and no one. But he had made a promise. And so, when people in the world sought shelter from the winds, or a place above the floods, or protection from the Titans, Rushama provided. He gathered the helpless together, and once they were safe, they could build, or study, or create, or just exist as they liked. They were his everything, and with them, Rushama continued to grow in both power and majesty. Time passed, and generations turned. Outside, the winds calmed, the floods receded, and the Titans no longer roamed. The few that still remained in the world went to sleep, or into hiding, or chose their own domains to shelter within. Now that Rushama was no longer the only place that was safe, some of the people desired to explore what else the world might have to offer. Rushama was surprised and at first dismayed that some of his people wished to leave. But he knew that he had kept his promise and given them a refuge when they needed it. So though it gave him sorrow, he wished the explorers well. But then, some of the people who had chosen to stay began to whisper. "Beloved Rushama," they said, "what if the explorers find new dangers out in the world? What if they bring those dangers back here? You must forbid their return so that they do not put the rest of us at risk." Rushama felt a tremor to his core. He wondered what the child would have said, and his sorrow deepened. "Have you not kept your promise?" asked the whisperers. "It is they who choose to leave. They do not love you as we do, or else why would they leave? This is right." "Yes," said Rushama, "this is right." And he did as the whisperers asked, forbidding the explorers to return. And deep within Rushama's heart, a hollow began to form. Time passed, and once again some of Rushama's people had wandering hearts and desired travel to distant lands. "Mighty Rushama," said the whisperers, "what if the travelers are tainted by evil out in the world? What if they are tempted to betray us? You must erase their memories of this place, so that they do not put the rest of us at risk." Rushama felt another tremor, but this time it was easier to ignore, and his sorrow turned cold. "Have you not kept your promise?" asked the whisperers. "It is they who choose to leave. They do not love you as we do, or else why would they leave? This is right." "Yes," said Rushama, "this is right." And he did as the whisperers asked, withdrawing the travelers' memories so that they could not return. And deep within Rushama's heart, the hollow began to widen. Time passed, and some of Rushama's people began to sense the hollow within. They desired to search the depths of Rushama's heart to find the hollow and repair it. "Divine Rushama," said the whisperers, "what if the searchers are looking for a weakness? What if they are trying to destroy you from within? You must imprison them down there, so that they do not put the rest of us at risk." There was another tremor, but Rushama no longer felt it, for the hollow inside him had grown too large and too empty. The searchers pled for help, but only the hollow heard them. "All of these lands belong to us," said the whisperers. "You are not welcome." "Yes," said Rushama, "this is right." And so he imprisoned all who could sense the hollow, sealing them beneath the ground where they could tell no one of what they found there. Time passed, and the whisperers continued to whisper, and the hollow continued to grow, until one day it was large enough for a Titan. And the Titan in the hollow began to whisper too. "This is right," whispered the people on the summit. "This is not right," whispered the Titan in the hollow. Between these whispers lay madness, and Rushama could no longer keep his promise. The people were not safe, not the explorers, not the travelers, not the prisoners, and not even the whisperers. The Titans return. From above, from below and from the very people he sought to protect. And Rushama will no longer have the strength to resist them. And so will end the tragedy of Rushama.
So as she's been telling this story, Nira is just absolutely enraptured and slowly just kind of drifts into the room until she's sitting right there at the edge of the bed, just like staring at her. Just absolutely thoroughly engrossed in the story. So you think nothing remains of Rushama?
Certainly nothing remains within this shell that once made a promise.
So I will extend my hand to her, said, not nothing.
I don't think she accepts the hand. She just looks at you and just says, in this story, Rushama is corrupted, hollowed out until he is destroyed from within. The promise that he is not yet destroyed is not a happy ending.
No, but it is a hopeful one.
She shrugs.
The story's not over.
This story had its ending written long ago.
Do you still wake in the morning? Do you still sleep at night? Do you still drink water and take food? Do you still tell stories? You still do things. You still live. And your stories still have power. It's not done yet. Doesn't look good, but it's not done yet.
What do you propose could possibly avert what has already come to us? The world is falling apart around us.
Well, it was. We've started to fix some of that. And we're aiming to fix the rest of it, too. Not alone. We put our shoulders to the stones and push them where we can, but no one, no dwarf, no elf, no human, no halfling, none of us can do it alone. Not when it's something so important.
And who are you?
I would like to cast Beacon of Hope.
Okay. What does that look like here in this cell?
Well, it's a spell that bestows hope and vitality, but I think in this case, rather than the crackling energy she typically has. It's a little different this time. And it starts as a soft glow. She sort of, Nira closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and the glow starts to get brighter. She opens her eyes and looks at the storyteller, says, I have hope and I have faith. And what remains of Rushama is still here.
To do what?
To help.
The lesson in the story I told is not so that the children we tell it to can recite it as facts. It's not so that they can understand how profoundly unfair their lot is, because they know that. They know from this story who Rushama helps and who he does not.
They know those that failed Rushama. Those who failed to help Rushama, who forgot what the whole point was. They were so busy being shelters, they forgot to shelter Rushama itself. Your story may have one meaning that you intended. Well, like all good stories, it's got a lot more impact than that. We can't fix everything in a day, but we can make a start, and then have another day and another day, and build up a mountain again.
I think you all see within her that the sort of cold affect is cracking a little bit. You can see that the pain that's underneath that is coming out a little bit. And she says, it's very easy to say words, but it's too late. A Titan had been returned only for the world to begin being torn asunder. A gaping chasm, not just in the physicality of the mountain itself, but in the very universe. It's
That was true.
What do you mean?
I think it might be easier to show you. And I would like to lead her out of the cell. And I believe this emptied out like right onto the stairs. Was that right? Because this was the first area we came through, correct?
Yeah, there are stairs in this level. And so, incidentally, as you're doing that, I think Miranessa she's kind of staying back. She's got a little bit of, you can see, Nira, you know her well enough that you can see that there's hints of kind of defensiveness in there. A little bit of like, well, it wasn't me who did those things. It's not what I was taught, but I feel like I'm being blamed anyway. Like, you can see that in her, but she knows better than to say anything right now. So she's kind of, staying back so as to not interfere with what you're doing. But so where are you taking the storyteller?
Just to outside the building, because I believe there were a bunch of people out there and everything is still frozen.
Yeah, so I think you wouldn't have to go far for her to see that. I mean, because there's even the other prisoners here on this level, and the guards and just other people within the structure.
So standing outside, kind of give her a moment to take it all in. Like you can see, everything is stopped right now. The thing that was happening that caused everything to break down, and it wasn't even just this plane, it was everywhere and everything, as you said. All of it unraveling. My friends and I have been working against this, trying to not just repair it, but hoping to make it better. And right now, with everything stopped, we have an amazing opportunity to do the impossible. To fix this
Starla, I'm
thing.
sorry. I hate to interrupt, but your audio is suddenly very muffled.
Weird. Is it better?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened.
Um.
Yeah, I'm
Let's see,
sorry.
where was it? Okay. Yeah.
An opportunity.
Yes, we have the opportunity to not just fix everything, but make it better, improve it. I wanted to speak with you specifically because I know what I was taught was not the full story. All of my people, I think they were taught very different things than the people down here. And that is what I wanted to learn, what I needed to learn. Because there's nothing I could do to improve it if I didn't know where things went wrong, what the problems were to even begin to start fixing things. Because while yes, a lot of what we're attempting to do is stop it all from unraveling and so much more. But we need to leave it better than we found it.
Campsite rule.
When I spoke of a hole in space, you said not anymore. What does that mean?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but there was an artifact that was used in the depths of the mountain that caused a moment of time to be plucked out of its rightful place, and that caused all manner of effects throughout every plane of existence. That gaping hole is no longer there. That's one of the things, and kind of pointing over to Ket. He
Swish.
did something to stop that and separate us from the forces that were bearing down upon this universe and wreaking such havoc across everything.
I wish to see this place.
Well, that's... I mean, do we go there right now? There's
Well,
a
anyway.
slight risk that going too near there will wake up a demon lord attempting to come through. That's my only hesitation here.
Young elf, you say you ask these stories of me because you wish to know the other side. And now you do, so what? What do you ask of me? Because it seems right now as though you ask for forgiveness in exchange for honeyed words.
No. What's been done here is... it is not something I can ask forgiveness for. That's not up to me. What I would ask for... I guess, is hope that things could be better. And I know you have no reason to trust me. I don't know how to prove to you that I mean what I say, that I tell no lies, that my intent is to make things better for everyone, not only my people.
It would seem to me that my feelings on the matter don't enter it one way or the other. You have asked me what I think. I think that it is too late. I've not seen anything to convince me otherwise. But if you believe that you have the power to make things better, then who am I to aid or hinder you? Why are we still having this conversation?
Because I can't do it by myself.
So then, what do you want? My permission?
No. Just your faith?
I think I want to cut away right there. Are we ready to flash back a little bit and revisit the party as they were just coming off of soaping Jinxie?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a speech where Nira had asked the rest of her party, the rest of these heroes of legend, for their faith. And Mugen, you're intrigued and all. Well, I don't want to tell Mugen how Mugen feels, but in listening to...
Intrigue is probably right.
Yeah. So in your curiosity of like, okay, where's she going with this? You suddenly find your attention drawn to a stone that you've been carrying for a while. That you have lots of stones, of course. But one of them was a gift given to you a while back. And you were told that what it would do is anytime you wanted, it would tell you the location of the witch that cursed you. And the way everyone's talking, it seems like they're getting ready to head into like the big showdown.
Yeah.
Might not be a lot of time to do other stuff. So, you kind of decide, hey everyone, hold that thought. I got to take care of something.
Right?
Yeah.
Without
So-
actually saying that, just vanishing.
No, just kind of poofing.
No,
But in the
no,
way the
I-
smoke billowed, I think it was apparent.
Mugen said that last time. Yeah. Anyway, didn't say where or what,
No.
but just
Or
gotta
how
take care
long.
of something. Yeah. Be right back is what Mugen
Be right
said.
back.
Yeah.
BRB.
Yeah. So are you heading straight there? You have your ways, of course, to
Yeah.
travel the, the arcane and mystical byways of the multiverse. Are you stopping off anywhere? Or are you kind of just saying it's
No.
time to just follow this stone's beacon?
No, Mugen's gonna go right there because there's been an increase in the feeling of urgency that Mugen has been discussing since he came back, and it's gnawing at the back of his head really hard. And so he wants to get this done, and maybe that will make the gnawing go away. Because it's clearly something that he doesn't want to do, but perhaps feels that he should do.
So, when you last saw this entity, because it's
Mhm.
clear she's not human or even a standard mortal creature, you've certainly come to understand a lot of things about the nature of such creatures,
Sure.
such entities. But what did she look like the last you saw her?
She looked like an old woman with gray, frizzy hair, barely contained. Not even contained. Like, she had a scarf wrapped around her head, but it was an attempt that was doomed to fail from the get-go. That hair could not be contained by mere silk. And she was dressed just like I don't want to say like an old woman in a fairy tale, but like an old woman in a fairy tale. A peasant woman, sturdy stock. She could, wrestle a mule.
She appreciates the archetypes.
Yeah.
So, because it has never actually, I think, been in game at any point, do you want to tell the story of how it happened?
Oh.
Because I think it's something that you and I have talked about, but never in game.
Well, I mean, the long story short, right, is that I cheated her. This will surprise not just the other players, but also anyone who's listening, especially those who've been listening since the beginning. But turning into this fox monkey person, Mugen was kind of a dick. I know, you're all shocked. As insufferable as he is now, he was way more insufferable then. And a slick con artist. And like, as much as a good-natured con artist he is now, none of that was there then. He was mean-spirited and would take advantage of people and not think twice about it. And this witch cursed him to be both a fox and a monkey, because that's all he was. Is that what she said? And not even a human being, not even worth being a man, was essentially her curse. And he has been making his way in this form ever since. And has never come across... For a while early in the transformation, he tried to hunt down the witch, but never found her. And now... so this is... And even when he got that gift of the stone to find her, he never used it. Because that was much later in his path to enlightenment.
I think that one of the times that you had tried to track her down, you had made your way to where you were told there was a strange old house in the swamps, and you had followed the signs that had been described to you and found a place where, sure, it seems like a house could be built there, but there sure isn't one there.
Mm-mm.
And I think you probably like,
What was really weird, giant chicken feet scratches. Like, what's up with that?
crazy.
Giant chicken was here?
Yeah.
No, there was a house, apparently.
I think you probably went and even sort of just like walked around where it would be, like maybe waving a stick around because, like, in case it was invisible.
Could have
or
been
something.
invisible.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. But no house there.
No house.
As you emerge from the silk scarf lined passage across the plains, although technically you have left the prime material plane and re-emerged just elsewhere on it,
Still the fastest way to travel.
you find yourself back in that very same swamp, but this time there is a house there. And it looks exactly like you expected that it would all those years ago. A lifetime ago, even.
Yeah.
But the swamp feels strange now because time has stopped. There is no sound of insects, no gentle slurping of the water and the mud, no frogs, no smoke from the chimney. It awaits you,
Is
frozen.
there smoke in the chimney that's just not moving, or nothing?
Nothing. There's nothing coming from the chimney right now. But this is where the stone is telling you to go.
Yeah. I have to touch someone for them to unfreeze, right?
It's generally touching is the way that people have been doing it, but it's the magic is more really about like the intention to unfreeze someone. And some of
All
the
right.
more powerful entities you've come across didn't need to be physically touched. It was more about
Sure.
like your desire to unfreeze them was enough.
All right. Well, bucking myself up to remove any desire to unfreeze anyone, I approach the house and peek in the window.
Okay. So the windows are filthy.
Mm.
It is very difficult to see much through them, but you do see haphazard furniture. There does seem to be a large cauldron in one corner. There's, what might be bookshelves under all sorts of haphazard clutter piled so high among them that it's really kind of just part of a pile rather than shelves. There's an area that there seems to be some like seating area, but you really can't see much detail because the windows are just so covered with like dust and mildew and cobwebs and mud.
All right. Well, let's go inside.
right.
Shoot. Everything's frozen. What's the harm?
You just go in through the front door.
Yeah.
All right. When you grasp the doorknob, it turns in your hand, but then you find that you can't pull your hand away. Your hand is stuck fast to the doorknob, and it swings inward, yanking you off your feet.
Mm-hmm.
and you find yourself suddenly freed from the doorknob, but tumbling head over heels, and then falling, not far, but when you land, you are now seated in a rotting, overstuffed armchair.
Hmm.
Looking around, you realize this is the armchair you could see from the window. So the something about the layout of this place isn't right, because you were yanked forward and then fell 6 feet and then ended up in a different place. But there's something here.
See, and this is why I didn't trust magic for so long. He says to no one.
So the as you're sitting there, the chair smells bad. Like
Yeah.
it's
Imagine the whole house does.
yeah, like it's extremely musty, but it's also, you know, it's got the kind of this reek of like swamp decay in there, but also it very much in the sort of way that people might try to cover up bad smells with pleasant ones that are powerful. That does seem to have occurred here as well, except that whoever was responsible thinks different smells are pleasant than you would probably choose.
Right. There's some swamp potpourri, is what you're saying.
Yeah. You know, there's what might very well be like a corpse flower, or for all you know, an actual corpse somewhere. There's some smells that smell kind of harsh and chemical in the air. And then there's also the smell, something smells like it's burning from somewhere. And there is kind of a haze in the air. And are you just sitting there in the chair, or
I'm looking around to see if the witch is around anywhere. Because I didn't come here to sit in a chair. Is she around? I kind of half expected to land in the chair and then she be in front of me, perhaps cackling. But I'm guessing I don't see that.
You don't see anyone yet, anyway. You're looking around. You don't see anyone just obviously present, but I think you do feel sort of like fur along the back of your neck on edge. You certainly feel like you are being observed. And as you look around, you hear, and not in your head, but you hear a voice, even though you can't quite tell where it's coming from, that just says, "Well, it's about time."
It's not like you made yourself easy to find.
I was just as easy to find as I needed to be.
Yeah.
If you had found me then, what would you have said to me?
Oh, well, not what I'm going to say now. I'll tell you that for free.
Well, there you go.
So where are you? I do better with faces. I have dealt with too many amorphous, undulating voices recently. I just need a face.
Suddenly, all of that haphazard clutter over by the bookshelves, you know, there's like knickknacks and books and scrolls and old laundry and weird mushrooms and everything just all in a pile. Some of it shifts and then turns around, and you see this hunched old woman that was just literally her back. All of this was piled on top of her. And she turns around, and it's the same face that you recognized. But the expression on her face, like there was a malicious glee when she cursed you. This time, the expression is another one that you know well, but what you know it from is feeling it on yourself when you've played a good joke on someone.
Yeah. I mean, credit where credit's due. That's pretty slick camouflage. I won't lie. Like, did not suspect. So, props.
Well, had a lot of time on my hands.
Yeah, I'll bet you have.
It seems like you've gotten yourself up to some pretty important shenanigans since last we spoke.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I really have.
Tell me your favorite.
No. Because this isn't about you. I didn't come here to play your games. I came here to play mine. I just wanted...
She kind of shuffles over to where there's, a spot you feel like if there were going to be two chairs, it's where the other one would be. But she just kind of sort of settles back like she's sitting onto a chair that isn't there. But like she's just got all this stuff around her that she might as well be walking around with an armchair on her back.
Well, you know how I love theatrics. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly.
By all
And
means.
Mugen breaks out, of course, a folding table
Mm-hmm.
and some shells and the pea.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this isn't a wager. We're just talking. But I would like you to watch the pea. And he starts moving it back and forth. Back and forth. I've done this a lot. I've gotten very good at it. And I was good at it even when I had 5 fingers. But I'm still good with 4. And goes back and forth, back and forth. It says, I used to think that I was God doing this. You know? Having the power over people. And knowing I could change what was going on in their lives in an instant. With just a flick of my hand, a twist of my fingers. I could do that. Where do you think the P is?
I'm just as a meta level, I'm amused by the irony because just as you were doing that, we had we had Chooch drop off the call, and then everyone moved into different spots. So
Weird.
okay.
Sorry.
No worries.
Weird?
No worries. Yeah.
Or
So
fitting for the narrative?
well, I was just observing how it was kind of it was funny timing.
Yeah.
So she smiles and says, well, of course the P is wherever you want it to be, but
I thought that for the longest time. And he shuffles around. And then I had a conversation with someone very much like you in a lot of ways and very different in others. And she put a very similar game that I have in front of you right now, in front of me. And I'll be honest with you, I have not been on the Mark side of this game very often. So it surprised me a bit. And she asked me, not where the P was, but where I was. And I thought maybe she was saying that I wasn't the con man, that I was the Mark, that I had been fooling myself the entire time. But she didn't even mean that. She told me that I'm not con man, but I'm not the mark. I'm the P. And I get shuffled about where I'm needed by forces beyond my control. For a story larger than myself. And sometimes I get a chance to shine when someone chooses correctly. And other times I'm kept hidden away, just in case. And maybe that's my role in the grand scheme of things. And maybe that was my role then. I feel like it's very different now. Because unlike before, I know what it means to feel like a god. I've been fortunate enough to have a taste of that, if not all of it. And it's not about controlling people's lives. And it's not about changing their fates on whims. And it's not about looking down on people. I thought it was. I really did. I thought that's how you knew you weren't the P and you weren't the mark. As if you had someone else to look down on. And I did everything I could to make sure that there was someone else there. And then you made me 4 feet tall. And with this face and this body and this very luxurious tail. And I see now I have friends now. You haven't met them, and don't try to meet them, please. I have a reputation to uphold. I have friends, and I totally lost my train of thought. Oh no!
I think that like while you've been telling the story so far, like her demeanor has kind of evolved as you go. Like there was certainly a sense early on where she seemed really sure she had you all figured out. But the bit about, how you took the question of where you are as opposed to the P, and especially once you started talking about, not knowing you're powerful by comparing yourself to others, not looking down on the others, that's where she started looking a little bit less sure of herself. Like she had been preparing in her head how I think what you find now, looking at her with everything that you've gained over all this experience, all these experiences you've had, you find she's much more transparent to you than you maybe expected. Her nature is, in many ways, decided for her by others. What kind of a being she is, what kinds of things she likes to do, what things that she enjoys and what she doesn't, is really kind of limited in a lot of ways. And I think you see her start to recognize that, because as much as you are no longer about looking down on people, she finds for the first time, probably in a really long time, that she's looking up at someone. And she's not sure how she feels about that.
So, my friends, I joke with them a lot about being enlightened. I don't think I'm enlightened yet. I'm working on it. It's a long process. I probably won't make it before I die, but that's the point. It's the journey, not the destination. I'm learning that. But I do think I'm getting closer. And one of the things that got me closer was the realization that this was never a curse, that this was a gift. If you hadn't done this to me, if you hadn't given me this body, I never would have met the people who I now consider my dearest companions in the world. And I never would have gotten on any of the journeys and adventures that we've been on. And it's a cliche, obviously, that once you save all of existence, well, then you're bonded for life. But I really think that's true. And I think I had this confidence before that we were all going to make it because, heroes of legend, that's what they call us. I didn't come up with that. I just like it. I spread it around. That we were all going to make it and live happily ever after because it seemed right. But now as things start winding down, I feel like maybe it's not. Maybe they're not going to make it. Maybe I'm not going to make it. I really did want to get to enlightenment. But I might not make it. And I think I'm okay with that. And I think I'm okay with that because I've had a better life than I would have otherwise. I probably would have been stabbed in the gut not long after you met me, honestly. And I would have deserved it. I was definitely someone who deserved a horrible death. And now I'm not that person anymore. And I'm really glad not to be that person. I'm really glad to be this. You asked what I would have said when I first arrived, if I'd found you back then. And I would have demanded that you change me back. But I don't have that anymore. You can't change me back because this is who I am. And I wouldn't want it any other way. So, thank you. You joked that this was to reveal who I am, to be on the outside what I was on the end. And I think that worked better than you intended.
So you see in her eyes how hollow it is when she goes on from there to say, well, of course I knew all along.
I know.
So, now that you've come here and said these things, you're off to save all of existence, is that right?
Well, second time's the charm, as they say. But yeah. Yeah, I think we're ending that. There might be a few more stops on the way, but I think we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. But before I go, I really would like you to answer. Where's the P?
You're definitely sensing like real anxiety there because she recognizes at this point what you're saying here, that there's like it's and she wants it to be right. And she sizes you up. She's peering at you. Looks carefully, even sniffs each card a little bit. That one. She points to the right-hand one.
Mugen turns over the right-hand one, and there's a P there. And he turns over the middle one, and there's nothing. And he turns over the left-hand one, and there's another P. From one P to another. Thank you.
I think that's a great button for the scene, honestly. So I think, unless you had more you wanted to say, perhaps we just go ahead and dissolve to you leaving this little house behind. This figure of an old woman looking thoughtful to herself as you leave her behind. And you making your way back to your friends?
Yeah. Wherever you guys are.
All right. And so I think as you sort of make your way through the, these hidden paths of the world, you find yourself emerging, not where you left them, but certainly you see them. They're all now within this this underground dark elf city once again, and there is a truly ancient-looking dark elf there that has just asked Nira what is wanted from her, and Nira says, "Your faith," and that's when you show up.
Is Amethyst a panda right now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Excellent.
Cadence is laying on the ground on her back like a cat, and she's batting at Amethyst's hoof tail.
Amethyst is trying to wiggle in a way that makes it a game, of course. Whatever that means with a very... I mean, panda tails are short, so let's not make it weird, but fun.
Yeah, so I think so the storyteller sees Mugen arrive and is just sort of frowning and saying, "What is this now? I'm not persuaded by tricks and prestidigitation."
Oh, you'd be surprised what people are persuaded by. What I miss?
A lot.
Fair enough. I'll pick it up from context clues.
Okay.
I think the storyteller just turns back to you, Nira, and says, "You asked for my faith, and I need to see it."
All right. Well, I was
Oh,
trying to think.
That's not what faith is about. Like, if you need to see it, it ain't faith, is it?
What I need to see is evidence that the faith is not misplaced. And you're absolutely right.
Oh,
It's not blind faith. And guess what?
I meant
If
to
blind
wear this.
faith is what is asked of me, then I deny it.
Yeah,
I've
Mugen,
seen
you
too
sort of missed
much.
it. There's like a whole story and stuff.
Oh,
yeah,
is it about
like-
the secret origins of Rashama?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, you
that's in Trickster God 101. No, we got that.
Okay, so like that's what she was talking about.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
So I was trying to think of something I could do here. So I guess this is kind of going to be a make it up as I go and hope the DM goes along with it.
So, Tuesday.
Yeah. So,
well, let me give you a little context too. I think that, so one of the things that she is asked was to be able to see that this void in space has been filled, right? Like, that's one of the things she
Right.
wanted. Not, like, as DM, I certainly understand your reluctance to just say, hey, sure, let's go. But right now, you clearly have magic, right? And she can understand, like, okay, maybe she even believes that Rushama, there's a part of Rushama still in you, and that's why you have this magic. But what she needs is something to make her believe that this is not the same Rushama that sealed her people away for thousands of years, that broke his promise and allowed all of this to happen. Right?
right.
That's what she needs here is something, not the existence of Rushama, but
Right.
how Rushama is different.
Well, what I would like to do, and this is kind of where like it's a little funny because I kind of want to. The goal here is to kind of let Rushama do the talking, rather than me. So what my intention is I want to hold my hand out to her again, and I will tell her just listen, and try to open myself to let kind of in the way that I did with Alaric, when I granted him those cleric-y powers, to let her more feel that Rushama is there and feel those changes for herself, if that makes sense. Kind of a direct communing, because I don't have any other way to really do that.
Yeah. So I think that, not that it's by any means the most important thing here, but certainly I'd say you're going to use a spell slot for a commune, right?
Yeah,
do you
I was
have
thinking
that
something
prepared,
along
or?
the lines of like ceremony or commune or something.
Yeah.
Something
So
like
go
that.
ahead and expend that, but I think what she needs right now is kind of a good old fashioned divine persuasion roll.
Okay.
In the sense that, in some ways, you're wanting Rushama to do the persuading, right? To show that he's different. And I
Right.
think as you try to open everything up in this way, and especially having listened to the storyteller's story, you realize Rushama was back with the original child who found him, and then later with the community that formed on him, and then still later with those who whispered that he should prioritize them over others. Rushama has always been what his people made of him. And so you realize now, you've had hints of this before, but you realize now that this part of Rushama that is inside you isn't the Rushama that existed before, that has come and rested and stayed within you. It's it's the Rushama that you have made of him. And so I think that, like, yeah, I think it's a persuasion roll. But it's all of these things that you're doing are what are letting you make the roll. But the other element here that I'm just going to kind of go into is that, like, I think it's still unclear to her, especially because it's unclear to me, Christiana, what is actually being asked of her. Because it's one thing to say, I want your faith, but she's feeling like, to do what? To stand around and clap for you when you wave your hands around, or what? Like, that she doesn't understand what you actually want, because from her perspective, the faith is like, the last time she had faith in anybody, it was people that she knew, and it's,
Right.
you know, it was earned.
Right. So, as this would be happening, I would kind of, I suppose, describe how I would like to see things change, how the potential that they have.
Okay, how about this? I think as you open up Rushama's magic to her and bring her into this communion, you realize you have the possibility of giving her visions of a possible future.
Mhm.
So I'm essentially wanting you to, I'm going to want you to describe, it can be brief, but 3 visions that you want to give her, and each one will be associated with a persuasion roll. And
Okay.
and once that's done, we'll see how those rolls go. Now,
Okay.
when I say persuasion roll, I know that, like, it's not necessarily your best skill. I actually don't know what your skill is in
I
that,
have a
but
+3 to persuasion.
let's see, that's not too bad.
It's not terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that this is kind of a skill challenge.
May I assist?
Um, how would you be assisting? I'm not saying no. I'm asking how that would take effect.
So, one of the things is to somehow support the vision, but also by declaring himself as part of the new followers of Rashama, to show that it has spread beyond the mountain. It has spread beyond the dim vision that was given of it before.
Oh, I had an idea. I think that what you recognize, the the religious insight that you have, Nira, as you open this up, is that part of the problem here is that she's just having trouble getting past who you are. But she certainly sees that you have gathered a lot of different people around you that seem to be with you. And so I think what you and Rushama realize is that this becomes a big group commune spell, and I want a vision of the future and a persuasion roll from everybody.
Ooh. All
All right.
right.
So, should I go first?
If you like.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when I say a vision of the future, it doesn't have to be just something that would affect the storyteller personally. It's more a matter of, like, she doesn't have faith in you. She doesn't know you. She has reason to distrust. but she sees that there are others around you that have gathered. What she needs to see is what they think you would do if you get what you want. Like, what do they think is the future that is possible with all of this? Because otherwise she's, what she thinks is that it's all too late. Like, the time that this could have been fixed is long gone, and that everything's just going to continue to crumble. But if you believe that there is hope for a better future, what does that look like for each of you?
All right. So, for me, my vision of the future is the city of Faru Shah restored, but it looks very different because the people are not homogenous anymore. And at the center of all of that is a place where people gather to exchange knowledge, just in order to take that knowledge and make the world better. And it's people that are like the best in their fields. And we're talking about, dwarven stone cutters. We're talking about people from the desert, talking about the different animals, the creatures that live there, wizards of the different schools, teaching students basics of the different spells and the theories behind it. Massive libraries where anyone can come and read and learn, so long as they take that knowledge back out into the world and use that to make their environments better, to help people to make their own lives better, make other lives better, to build things, to help things grow. There's a large garden that has a bunch of druids that talk about, how to grow different plants and different enchantments and the languages of animals. And it's people from everywhere exchanging knowledge and learning from each other. And the city grows and changes because of that, and becomes stronger for that diversity that's there. And the heart of all of this is the Temple of Rushama that is not only on the surface but extends far down into the mountain, to accommodate all sorts of people.
Maybe we shouldn't have let her go first.
Well, so let's see the roll.
Okay.
Because we got to do dice. This is a game, a dice game.
All right. So rolled a 12 plus 3, so it's a 15.
All right. Who wants to follow that up?
Well, Kat was seeing something similar in terms of Emerald Arboris. He was seeing, the city restored, the tree thriving. This was long in the future. He was seeing himself as an old bard sitting around teaching youngins how to, sing and just singing songs to everybody and just everyone laughing and having a good time. And in the background is the tree, and you can see sort of the tree being used freely, of people coming and going through the branches. Cadence brings him an apple pie. He's happy. But yeah, he just sees a future where everything is quiet and peaceful, and everyone is relatively happy. So not as elaborate as Nirkina, but still, that's what he sees.
Sure. Want to give me a roll?
It's a 12 plus 17. So
All right.
yeah, so it's a lot. 30.
Everyone can practically taste that apple pie.
So Mugen's vision is a little different than those other two. It's a little more metaphorical. But it's there's at first a huge monster, dark and evil, very shadowy, and it's ginormous. And then up walks to the monster a sort of idealized version of Nira in gleaming armor, with a sword made of pure light. And she challenges this monster, and the monster laughs at her. But behind her, we see not just the heroes of legend, but also an immense group of people of different races and creeds and ages and genders and some animals thrown in there. Why not? But just this huge, broad section of everything that could be called sentience just behind her. And as they come closer to Nira, they all sort of merge into this large, very Studio Ghibli, glowing creature that now in turn has dwarfed the evil creature. And now it is now as small compared to this beautiful, light-filled alien god thing, as it was to Nira once before. And it is easily vanquished because everyone came together. And then with that vanquishing, there is a brief coda of people frolicking in fields and, you know, all the positive stuff that everyone else talked about.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
And that roll was a 30.
All right.
Not bad.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a few more people to hear from.
Archie can go. He's having a hard time really seeing the future because things have been, you know, the way they have been. So, oh wait, there we go. I think he would be do kind of a montage of what we've been through and really showing the evils and the darkness and kind of like the coup de grace, kind of each of bringing each of those things down and like, you know, destroying the evil ooze black thing and creature and the, you know, and closing rifts and, you know, the Croatoa people and how happy they became and their and so it's kind of showing all of these defeating darkness, bringing the light, and then showing how Amethyst brought, you know, the tree grew further and spreading light with the spreading of the tree. And kind of everybody kind of being that, becoming a beacon of singing in harmony to everybody.
I think, especially with evoking the Croatoans and how you all handled that, because when you chose to defeat the spirit of Lake Elamon, you had a choice to allow it to become another big, powerful spirit, or to let the energy, you know, be dispersed out all over. And especially just freeing, you know, enslaved people. I think you get an advantage on this role just because that particular bit, I think, is like especially appeals to what this woman is.
That's kind of my focus, is what has been defeated and exactly the choice of what to do with it. Yeah. 25.
All right. Getting some good rolls. All right.
He does have plus 20 to his, or I mean plus 11 to his persuasions.
Cadence will show her a vision of herself at the tree. She's just sort of absently, like the tree is flourishing again. in a way that even she doesn't remember it having been when she was young.
When you say herself, do you mean Cadence,
Cadence.
or okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Cadence, yeah.
Mhm.
And there are small, not real small, but like, 10-year-old children of all different races around her. And she's talking to them about the tree and showing them what can be done with the tree and how it can bring people together, because that's what it was made for. And as she does this, there's actually a few Githyanki who come down one of the branches. And even though they're a little rough and abrasive, they're happy to have been given the opportunity to explore in this way. And she sort of starts lecturing the children about how important it is for everyone to have the opportunity.
All right.
17.
17. All right. Amethyst? Alaric?
Amethyst can go. Hers is gonna be real simple, obviously. You know, I'm
That's
not a
fine. Oh,
wordsmith.
sure. No
It's
worries.
basically just a vision of like the children, familiar theme. Because when you're talking to leaders, you know you've got to show that you're thinking about the children. Just like a montage of children and like older folks that are like not as useful as like, you know, she's older, but like there's some that are just still kind of there and not as useful and a little more vulnerable. And it's just like showing them and the young families that are just starting out, like just in a safe sense of community, like they're supported, they're not afraid of anything, they're not running from anything, they're not defending against anything, they're not preparing for war, they're not training for battle, they're children, they're learning how to produce food through farming and, you know, treat ailments through learning, you know, simple herbology and, you know, just a lot of imagery of the drow children. They're drow, right?
Yeah, I've been saying dark elves, but yes.
Dark elves, it's like the same kind of forces. I think they tend to enjoy being below ground. And one thing that Amethyst would hope that Rushama speaks so much about nature would find a way to invoke some of, not invoke, but bring some of the surface nature below ground. So you might be in the normal underground dwellings, but you'll see things that normally only thrive in sunlight and things like that. That would be Amethyst's hope and something that she would work her magic to try and make happen.
All right.
And she's going to roll shitty because she's got a
Well,
+0.
she can go ahead and roll with advantage also, though. I think the...
Well, that was a natural 20.
Oh, well. Okay, there you go.
So, yeah, we're going to obviously stick with that.
Sure.
'Cause the
Meant
other
to
one was
be.
not. Yeah.
Oh man. So I rolled it already for inspiration, and I think this is going to be funny.
Okay.
In gathering and feeling this energy and feeling this sense of hope and the sense of purpose and a sense of the potential of what can be done if we can help them to believe again, help all of them to know that they are not forgotten, that things were bad and that memories were lost. He starts to think a little bit about something he's not thought a lot about, which is the future. He's been pretty sure he's been going to die for a long time. And there's a little bit of that gets into the vision about the number of times that he's come close to death or faced off against things and wasn't certain. And through all of that, there's sort of, if you will, the defocus on all of the area around as he looks for something to be certain of. And the lights on near Kina who comes into sharp focus in contrast with everything else around. And a sense of peace comes over him, and that's transmitted through this notion of a vision. And then he hears the laughter of children and turns around to see 3 kids, one older, probably in his late 20s, it's hard to tell, already sprouting a pretty sizable beard. Taller than the average dwarf, though. Strange tint to his skin. Looks a little thinner than you might expect as well. Which seems to be chasing after 2 much younger children. One with a shade of hair very similar to Nirikina's, but with this dark eye color that's not hers, who seems to be chasing after another boy, slightly older, who has flowing brown hair, thick eyebrows, rather stocky set, and behind them is a large sculpture. As part of that sculpture, there is a piece that looks remarkably like Granite Bob. And beneath it, there is a collection of smaller stones, each of them carved lovingly but crudely, capturing a moment. And he hears Nirikina's voice. The words are indistinct. Something somewhat cross, but also somewhat caring. Probably something that you might expect was directed at the kids. But then the vision turns as Alaric turns to the voice and sees Nirikina standing here in front of him. And he's wide-eyed because, kind of like the prayers he's had before, he realizes, damn it, she heard every single moment of that vision. I rolled a 1.
Oh, no.
So total of 8, but yeah.
Well, I think that, people might have been more stressed about the 1 if we hadn't already had a number of pretty
Sometimes it's good to go last.
Hey. So I think all of you are sharing in all of these visions, and I think it's probably the first time in a long time, because you haven't really talked much about what comes after the things you have to do. You mostly had focused on, well, you want to stop the universe from being destroyed, or stop the demon lord from causing all sorts of havoc. But what next? What's the story that comes next? And as you kind of each share your own hopes and dreams, you see a tear come to the eye of the storyteller. And she doesn't soften completely. There is still a certain stiffness in her posture and demeanor, but she does take a moment, briefly wipe the tear away. And she says, I don't know if those visions can be brought to reality. But I am persuaded that it's worth trying.
That's all that I would ask you for. That's all we would ask you for. Just a chance.
And then she turns like directly to you, Nira, and this time she does take your hand. And she says, I don't know what version of the story I told is told to children from Farusha. But the Rushama that became a refuge for all did so because he made a promise to one girl. Maybe that's what he needs to do again.
It's not a story I was familiar with. But I appreciate you telling it to us. Thank you for entrusting that knowledge to us. It was more important than you know.
So then, what next?
Next, you start the new story. And you help us spread the story. Because we are gratified to have met you and heard your story and hopefully given you a shard of hope. But now we need to spread that hope to everyone.
I think she glances around at all the time-stopped people and says, I think that will be somewhat difficult at the moment.
Well, maybe there's something we can do about that.
It's
You wanna
almost like
try?
you're fishing for the end of a scene or something. So that you don't have to actually say what it is that you think you could do.
Well, my thinking here is that if we have something that we can all focus on, because so much of this that we do is based on intent and what we intend when we reach out to interact with another being. So I wonder if all of us focused our intent, if we could wake a large group at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Something that would bring them all together in some way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like a big show.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, there's. I don't know,
Was-
maybe using things in a way we haven't used them before. Like,
I'm thinking of episode 10 again now.
That's what needs to happen. You have shown me with these visions that perhaps this is a future worth having. But you will need to show all of them what you have accomplished so far. And that you are capable of bringing the world around us to that future.
Well, we've had bigger problems that we've solved.
It's just another one on the list, really.
Mm-hmm.
A few more resources this time.
Yeah. So I think that that Starla and I are on the same wavelength here. I think what's going to be needed here is that you're going to put on the story of the Heroes of Legend.
It's episode 10 again.
Ah, yeah.
Once upon a time, the Heroes of Legend put on a show about the Heroes of Legend.
Encore engagement.
Yeah. All right. So, I think, as you consider it, you believe it's possible, and perhaps then that's what we will do next time on Adventures on So Many Levels.
So many levels. Dissolve.
Yeah, I feel like I'm ending the episode a little bit early just because, like, I love that idea so much that I feel like we need to just, like, have that happen now. So, but I wouldn't want to force that on you impromptu. So, we'll leave it
Well,
there.
kind of did last time.
Well, last time it was all your idea and you just ran with it. So,
The stakes were a little smaller last
Yeah.
time, too, if I remember correctly.
Technically.
yeah. So I think we'll leave it there for now, though. And I have some great ideas for how this will proceed next time. But thank you, everybody, for watching and or listening. And, of course, thank you to my players. And we will be back next week for more adventure on So Many Levels.
So many
So many
levels.
levels.
So many.
Like a lot.